Hey, if you've ever read the passage where Jesus is telling people to eat his flesh and drink his blood in order to receive eternal life, you might be a little confused. And I've been a little confused about this passage myself, but I recently got some clarity on it. Would like to share it, and hopefully it's helpful to you as well. In order to understand this part of the passage, we need to go back to the beginning of John chapter 6 in order to understand the context. I'm going to very briefly summarize, hitting the high points, leaving out a lot of details just for time's sake. So go back and read it yourself to verify what I'm saying. At the beginning of John chapter 6, we have Jesus feeding the 5,000. And then he has to leave really quickly because they're about to come make him king by force. Afterwards, the disciples go across the lake. Jesus goes across the lake with them later, walking on water. And the crowd gets up the next day and says, "Where's Jesus?" They go looking for him, find him, say, "Hey, when did you get over here on the other side of the lake?" And they were a little confused. I guess walking on the water is a pretty good trick for losing your followers or unwanted followers. So they get over there. They'll say, "What you doing over here, Jesus?" Jesus says, "You're not following me for just because you want me. You're following me and looking for me because I fed you." So again, leaving out some details here, they said, "Hey, so what miraculous sign are you going to show us? You know, that we know that you're telling the truth, that you're a prophet we should listen to. You know, our forefathers, they ate manna in the desert." Hint, hint. And Jesus says, "It wasn't Moses that gave them manna, it came from my Father, and now my Father has sent the true bread, which is the one who comes from heaven." And there's some back and forth, but every time they don't like what he's saying, don't get what he's saying, grumble about what he's saying, he ups the ante, and he eventually tells them, "You need to eat my flesh and drink my blood." And I've always wondered why Jesus. I've always wondered why Jesus said something so offensive, so kind of gross. But I realized that he wasn't trying to offend them to chase them away. He was putting an offense in front of an attitude that was preventing them from actually getting him, from actually connecting with him, from actually understanding him. And the key, I think, really is in the manna. You think about, what did the Israelites do when they received the manna? They had everything cared for them. They had not a care in the world. And what did they do? They complained and they rebelled. Because they still had that slave mentality from when they'd been slaves in Egypt. They did not accept that God was their provider. They did not accept that they were cared for. They did not accept that God wanted to connect with them. If Jesus had gone ahead and just given them more bread and more food, he never would have dealt with the issue of their fear of lack, their fear of, we're not going to have enough food. We got to grab control to make sure we have enough. And so he put this offense in front of them. And this is what I call, this is that word that cuts. It comes in and it's there to cut off the things that are blocking your intimacy with God, that are blocking your relationship with God. And so many times in my life, when God's trying to teach me something new, he's trying to grow me in a new way, trying to take me to a new place, he puts that offense in front of me. Not to chase me away, not to keep me from going to where he's taking me, but because that offense needs to be there to cut off whatever it is that cannot come to the next place that he's taken me. And that's what he's doing here. And I've had a choice, so many times I've had a choice, and probably you have too, where you can make a choice like the crowd to get offended. The crowd got offended and they left, which is really understandable. But then Jesus turns to his 12 disciples and he says, "Are you going to leave too?" And Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life." They didn't leave. They leaned in and listened closer. They said they didn't get it. They didn't get it any more than the crowd did. But they said, we know you're good. We know you're the God. There it says, we know and believe you're the Holy One of God. They knew he was God. And they weren't about to leave. They had tasted and seen that the Lord was good. They had learned of God's love, of his gentleness, of his faithfulness, of his kindness in Jesus. They had experienced more joy and peace in him. And I can tell you that every time I walk into that offense that's placed in front of me, I get him. I get more of God. The thing that was blocking the intimacy is gone. I get to rest more in his love, not because he loves me more, but because I'm more able to receive it. I'm more able to connect with it. And then there is solutions that I couldn't never think of. There is more love, more joy, more peace. And while this cutting process hurts, and you do have to give up things, you have to give up control, you have to give up sin habits, you have to give up thought processes that made you feel good in the moment, or helped you survive up to this point. But where God's taking you, you've got to let that go. You've got to lay it down. So that you can get the one who is so beautiful. The one who's going to lead you into fulfillment. He made you. He knows what fulfills you. He's going to lead you into fulfillment. And as I've tested this time and time again, I promise you that that's what he's doing. So may God teach you about the fullness of his love and how much he loves you. May he give you the courage to walk into these offenses. It may give you the strength to keep going when it just seems like he's not answering, he's not listening. You don't understand what's going on. So God bless you. Thanks for listening.